Hey everyone, I'm Clayfect, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. Like many others, I have done some spring cleaning, and while I was up in my attic, I stumbled upon a very strange book that must originate from some of Mr. Clayfect's family, because I have never seen this book in my life. But I have to say it is pretty intriguing. The world of the unseen creatures. And when you flip through it, it explains so much. If true, it is really quite fascinating. It is a journal type book made by Richard Barlow. And here he described all sorts of creatures. And one of them really caught my eye, the first one in fact. Because I don't know about you, but from time to time I get spikes of sadness that are unexplained. But this actually explained it with this creature called the moodeater. It is a quite fascinating creature and a very good read. So you are more than welcome to pause and read it all if you want to. But I simply gotta sculpt this cute little unseen creature while you hear some of Barlow's notes. So without further ado, let's get started. So first off, we're going to start out with some armature that I'm slowly building up before we are going to put some clay on our little fella. Now when it comes down to the fur and the shape of the fur, the sketches actually doesn't show us that much. So I am going to take some creative liberties when it comes down to texturing the fur. Torturing myself as always, but you are going to see that later. Right now, I'm just trying to get the basic shape down, and there the book is actually really helpful. Speaking of this mystery journal, while I am trying to get some fur down and get the details on the torso looking like a moodeater, like I presume a moodeater is looking, why don't we hear a little bit more from Richard Barlow?
Richard Barlow, log, moodeater, the 3rd of November 1944. My stumble upon this peculiar creature was quite accidental. I found myself in a sudden, unexplainable sad mood one day, when I caught a glimpse of the creature out of the corner of my eye. A lesser learned man might have mistaken it for a rat or another kind of pest, though not far from the truth. My keen knowledge of the unseen world allowed me to quickly conclude that I was observing a quite rare sight. I found the name moodeater quite fitting, since happiness appears to be all the substance it needs. The moodeater uses its excessively long tail that it brushes up against people in a good spirit, temporarily depriving them of their positive mood. There are not many practical uses for an ability like that, were we to exploit it. And I have no doubt that many people would see the moodeater as a nuisance, were it to be commonly known, but that would be a mistake.
A mistake indeed it would be. I am so fascinated by these unseen creatures, and I just had so much fun sculpting this particular one, the moodeater. Though I have to admit, at this point you're seeing right now, I was cursing and swearing at myself. Simply because I again decided on two different kind of textures. In order to get this scruffy puffy look that I was going for, I rolled out some clay doodads that I shaped with my rubber shaper tool before I went in with my dentist tool and scraped the whole torso with it. But with the torso finally fully textured, I could pop it in the oven and start working on the head. You can say that I am working ahead. Get it? Because I'm sculpting the head. Head. Have I made this dad joke before? I don't know, guys. I had been thinking about stopping with the dad jokes, but the truth of the matter is that it really drives my husband crazy. So as a good wife, I can in good conscience stop with the dad jokes. Speaking of husbands, it is actually really weird because when I showed Mr. Clayfect this journal, he acted strangely. Usually he's this kind and easy to talk to guy, but when I showed him the journal, it was almost like he didn't want to acknowledge that it existed, and he didn't want to talk about it. He just blew me off and went to do something else. When I tried to talk with him later about it, he just said that he didn't want to talk about it and it was something from his family. It's very weird, don't you agree? Which of course means that I, as a good wife, have to not respect his wishes and dig a little bit deeper into this mystery. That will have to wait though. For now, let's focus on the sculpture. If we look at the drawings, the moodeater actually has sort of a sad, almost timid expression, and that is what I'm trying to capture here. Now, as I said, the drawings does leave a lot of room for interpretation. Not only when it comes to the paint job because it is scribbled down so fast, but also when it comes to the details of the face. But we do get a little bit more insight when we look at some of Richard Barlow's notes.
Since the moodeater is dependent on us humans to get the nutrients it needs, it is vital for them to keep us in a good mood. So if you suddenly find a small pleasant surprise, a long lost ring or a clean coffee mug you swore you used the day before, it might mean that you have a moodeater in your home. Adrenaline, endorphins and other kind of emotional rush are not to the normal moodeater's liking. They prefer to feed on slow, manageable dopamine, though I have on occasion observed the moodeater who have indulged themselves with the rush of that I before mentioned. Less said about that is better.
And with that knowledge, I think we can safely concur that it's not an evil unseen beast we got on our hands, and I want that to shine through with the sculpture. Speaking of sculpting, if you like my stories and like my sculptures, please consider like, comment and subscribe. It really means the world to me, and I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who has subscribed. We have just reached 500 and I am just so happy I can't get my arms down. Seriously. Thank you to all who has supported me. It means the world to me. Now I have made a short thank you video, or at least attempted to make a thank you video. There will be a link down in the description below for you if you want to watch that. Don't go yet though, because we still need to hear a little bit more about the moodeater while I am sculpting the feet.
However, in my opinion, it's not the way they eat, but the way they hide that is most impressive. The moodeater can somehow manipulate light. Further studies are needed to determine if they absorb or reflect the light to become almost completely invisible to the human eye. The only thing I can safely conclude is that you are only able to observe a moodeater in your peripheral field of vision, making them very hard to observe.
And very hard to sculpt. Richard Barlow describes in the first part of the journal this long tail it uses to extract happiness from people, and of course I'm going to try to replicate that, which sounds way easier than it is. I want this very elongated tail, and to do that I take some clay and put it on some amateur wire and just keep rolling it, but it is so difficult to get it uniform and not make it bumpy or lumpy any part of the tail. And the longer the tail, the more difficult it is. And as you can see, I made a very long tail. But positioned correctly, I think it's just going to look amazing on our little fella. While also helping supporting the sculpture, so it's not going to tip over. I know it sounds ridiculous, but making the tail was actually the most fun and the most difficult part of this whole sculpture. But overall, I just had so much fun with this sculpture. It is definitely not the last unseen creature that I'm making. But please tell me in the comments, do you like the moodeater, or are you an anti-moodeater, so to speak? If you are anti-moodeater, then I do see where you're coming from, because they're literally stealing our good mood. But then again, to me it just sounds like they are small scared guys that just want to survive. But I'll let you be the judge of that. Here is a little bit more from the journal, while I finish up the tail and start working on the arms.
With that type of cloaking ability, and with only being about 8 inches tall, it is impossible to guess how many moodeaters that exist, or if there are different variations of them. The only thing I have been able to determine is the moodeater to be a timid creature with a calm and quiet demeanor. Throughout my research, I have found it has no pack mentality at all, which is good, because being near so many moodeaters would surely lead to deep depression, if not harming oneself. That fact, and the way they can control light, might make them monsters in the eyes of the public. But I humbly ask you not to be narrow-minded. Just because it's unseen, do not make it unseemly.
I couldn't agree more with our Mr. Barlow, so let's do our best in making a great sculpture here. Now, he did describe it as a timid, scared creature, so I want to transfer that into the body language and also give it a rodent type look. So that is why I'm positioning the hands the way that I'm doing, and also why I'm giving it some pretty defined claws on the feet and on the hands. I want this creature to look like it had just been plucked straight out of this journal. So I'm doing my best to give this hint of realism to this cute little unseen creature that sounds like something that comes out of a fantasy book. Now, I do not judge, and I do not know if the moodeater exists or not. All I will say on that front is, if it does exist, then it really does explain a lot, doesn't it? Anyway, with the hands done, all we had to do was build up some more texture on the shoulders and the arms. Now, I will not complain, I will not say that I was so much done with making fur, yeah, you wouldn't believe. No, I will not do that. But I will say I felt relieved when I could finally starting to move on to finishing the head, making the big prominent ears that really just bring character and define this unseen creature that we are talking about. I made them out of cast clay, and I think it took me like 5 to 6 tries to make these ears, simply because they are so big and defined, and you want to make sure that the ears look similar, which only adds to the level of difficulty. But when they finally got on, it just added so much personality and character to this creature, in my opinion. I did think it looked so darn cute at this point, and I was very, very happy with it. When the head base was done, so to speak, all we had to do was finish up with the shoulders, and then it was time for placement. Giving him a little neck, making sure that the head wouldn't completely sunk into the body, so to speak. And while I do that and give the face some details, why don't we hear a little bit more of these mystery journal notes?
On a personal note, I have been pondering if the moodeater might have had a positive effect on our society as a whole. This is only pure speculation, of course. But the moodeater only seemed to bring sadness and emptiness when in contact with humans. No anger, no love, happiness or envy. So I can only wonder how many conflict has this unseen creature actually prevented. How many artists and musician has benefited from the moodeater.
Before we hear the last words of what Mr. Barlow has to say about the moodeater, I have to stop here. Because with the details done, it was on to the painting, and I actually went into quite the predicament here. The uses of color was apparently not that common back in 1930, so I had no idea on which color the moodeater actually was supposed to be. But judging by the journal, neither did Mr. Barlow. So I started out with a black, painting all the figure in a very, very dark way, before I moved on to paint pink into the ears. I was a bit nervous that it was going to be too dark to see any kind of details, but I actually think I managed at the end. Speaking of end, why don't we hear the last thing that Barlow had to say about the moodeater?
It's only me guessing, of course, but I have my doubt that blues music would ever exist were it not for the moodeater. And that's only on a cultural level. I strongly believe that was it not for the moodeater, we human would quickly overpopulate this big round dirt sphere we call home.
You know what? He could have a point there. Anyway, when I was done painting it all dark, I started to paint a dark red on the tufts of hair. And that's because there is actually a little piece of hair in the journal, and it has a slightly red shine to it. So I wanted to bring that through. That is also why the eyes are dark red. I just really thought it brought the sculpture more together and kept true to the journal. But with the fur and the last details painted, all I had to do was cleaning out the eyes and the claws. And with him all cleaned up and looking good, I think that is it for this sculpture and it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you like my little moodeater. I am a very, very big fan of him. I think it's one of the most cutest creatures that I have ever made. And then based off this old mystery journal. Who would have known? I just love him. And the shy little expression that I managed to get through. Not to mention the tail, I mean, that just looks great. I am so happy with it. Though I have to stop patting myself on the back now. Because, at last guys, it is time for me to sign off. I hope to see you next time. I post out every other Friday. But if you can't wait until next time, why not click on the square to your right? Then you're going to see Grog, the golem, get made. But until then guys, bye!